Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Ashtar Command in honor of the UFO conference that we were going to have in April. Instead, it's been pushed back to August. So, once more, I'd like to encourage you all to check out Sasquatch Coffee Company. They have some interesting blends not available anywhere else on the planet. Things like I Shine Coffee or Tree Knock Coffee, a Bigfoot-themed brew. You can find them at squatchcoffee.com. That's Sasquatch without the S-A at the front. Now, Organic Man Coffee Trike is setting up an online coffee sales. You can find them on Facebook at Organic Man Coffee Trike, or if you'd like to place an order, go to www.organicmancoffeetrike.shop. You can get a bag of the Trike Blend, which is Julio's own roasted coffee. You might like to check out coffee from Guatemala or Brazil. A coffee, the nectar of the gods. Today, coffee is the second most traded product in the world market, second only to oil. I did a show about coffee back in February. Yes, I drink a lot of coffee. There are always folks out there that will tell you too much coffee is bad for you. These folks are usually sickly-looking beings who get their pleasure telling other people what they should do in order to stay healthy. Why is it so many health advisors look so darn sick? I can never figure that one out. Back when I was young, there were only 4 TV stations in our area. 3 were VHF, a very high frequency. The TV knob would click from one channel to the next. If the signal was bad, you would move the antenna on top of the set. The antenna was called rabbit ears because of how it looked. A lot of people would get tinfoil and they'd wrap it to the antenna, and this would get a better signal. You'll see these in old-time movies and TV shows. Then there was one channel on UHF, ultra-high frequency. The antenna sat between the rabbit ears, and you never had to touch it because it wouldn't do any good. Instead, the knob controlling this channel was variable. It didn't click from channel to channel. You had to tune it, slowly turning the knob until you got a good, usually not so good picture. You had as many channels to watch depending on how many TV stations were in your area. Depending on things like weather, atmospheric conditions, local electronic equipment, you might get bleed over from another station. In 1948, in Mahoney City, Pennsylvania, John Wolson came up with the idea of sending TV signals over a cable. This would make the image on the set much sharper and cut out most interference. This was mostly for people whose reception was poor because of tall mountains and buildings blocking TV signals. A cable TV was not something most folks had. You had to pay for it, and it wasn't that big of a service when you could get the same channels for free, as long as you didn't have any mountains or buildings in the way. As time stumbled on, more channels were added to the cable network. Soon, channels from all over the country were available, and people began paying to watch. Our dad decided to have cable put into our house one day. Now, instead of 4 channels, we had 16 or 20. We could watch TV shows only available in other states. Another benefit was the channels didn't go off the air late at night. Some of y'all will remember seeing our nation's flag appear on the set around midnight, accompanied by the national anthem. This was followed by a test pattern. TV watching was over for the night. Channels would continue broadcasting until the next morning. I should say would not. A cable stayed on all night, though sometimes you did lose a few stations. A lot of the cheesy shows came on after the main channel shut down. Things like Ferdy's Inferno and Elvira's Movie Macabre would come on. So, instead of going to bed, some of us were staying up all night watching old horror movies. It made getting up the next day more of a problem. You could see all kinds of unusual things on TV. Cable wasn't as controlled as broadcast stations. Those over-the-top violent movies were no longer being chopped up so they could be shown on TV. Words were not being dubbed over or blanked out. Another big benefit was there were no commercials. Since you were paying for the shows, there were no ads being thrown in every so many minutes. On occasion, there would be a problem. One big problem was the folks who didn't pay for cable could catch the signals using some really minuscule devices. The easiest way was to run a piece of wire close to the cable. The signal would jump across, giving away free networks. As long as the wire didn't touch the cable, there was no law against it. As more and more folks were bootlegging cable, the signal was becoming degraded. So the cable companies began making signals decoded. You had to have a box in your home that would catch the signal and decode it so the picture would come in. As cable TV got bigger and bigger, other forms of TV became available. Satellite TV and other paid services came, and the government decided that digital TV was to become the norm. Analog TV broadcasts were required by law to end June 12, 2009. This meant you could no longer turn on a TV and watch a show. You had to use some form of a digital receiver. I really wonder why. The world's first electronic television was created in 1927 by a 21-year-old inventor named Philo Taylor Farnsworth. There's a name you don't hear a lot. Philo. This inventor lived in a house without electricity until he was 14. Starting in high school, he began to think of a system that could capture moving images, transfer these images into code, and move those images along radio waves to different devices. The very first TV star ever was named Felix the Cat. 1928 station W2XBS, which was an RCA's first television station, was established in New York. As a test signal, the station placed a small statue of Felix on a turntable. They aimed a camera at him and began broadcasting the image so they could see the results on a few test TV sets. Once the image was properly tweaked, they began broadcasting actual shows. The Queen's Messenger was the first television drama. It was a 1928 radio drama adopted for television and then broadcast both over the radio as well as TV. These were received by 3-inch televisions that were set up in various places in New York City. People slowly began buying TV sets. They were black and white and very limited, but as time marched on, shows got better and the TV sets got a little bigger. Lowell Thomas hosted the first ever regular scheduled news broadcast on television in 1940, which was a simulcast of his nightly NBC network radio newscast, with the television broadcast seen only in New York over pioneering NBC television station WNBT. People liked watching the news instead of reading it. It was a bit more entertaining. The newscaster would come on, tell you what had happened, and then sign off. None of this editorial stuff where the talking heads tell you only what they want you to know. At one time, there were hundreds of TV stations all over the country. Each had their own news coverage. Today, there are still hundreds of stations, but there are only 6 companies that own all of our stations. We get our news from the same few conglomerates that now decide what they will and won't tell us. Back in 1977, people living in England had BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV for their news. The main station would send out the signal, and smaller local stations would pick it up and then rebroadcast the show. They would kind of bounce it from one end of England to the other. Folks would tune in at around 5 in the evening to find out what was going on in England as well as the rest of the world. Things like how was the new European weather satellite, Metasat-1, performing since its launch from Cape Canaveral on November 23rd. Or maybe they wanted to know how that nuclear test went in Moraro Atoll, conducted by France on November 24th. You know, that's the one that was supposed to have created Godzilla. The anchorman came on and began his discourse on how things were going. As the news feed rolled, the audio was suddenly interrupted. Viewers must have recoiled in discomfort as a shrieking, crackling sound cut through their speaker. Through this metallic static, they heard a deep buzzing that seemed to come in waves. It would get louder and then quiet down a bit and get louder again. This was interrupted by a deep masculine voice that commanded their attention. In an echoing voice, the speaker introduced himself as a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command. This is what the voice on the TV said. "This is the voice of Vrillon, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the sky. We speak to you now in peace and wisdom, as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on your world around you. This is in order that you may share in the great awakening as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. The new age can be a time of great peace and evolution for your race, but only if your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgment. Be still now and listen, for your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past. and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution if you show yourselves worthy to do so. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. You are free to accept or reject their teachings, but only those who learn to live in peace will pass to the higher realms of spiritual evolution. Hear now the voice of Vrillon, the representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, is speaking to you. Be aware also that there are many false prophets and guides operating in your world. They will suck your energy from you, the energy that you call money, and will put it to evil ends and give you worthless dross in return. A dross is something regarded as being worthless, like rubbish. The voice continued. Your inner divine self will protect you from this. You must learn to be sensitive to the voice within that can tell you what is truth and what is confusion, chaos, and untruth. If you want to listen to what was said, go to YouTube and search for 1977 Vrillon. It looks like an actual recording of the broadcast. However, I'm wondering, how was it made since people couldn't record things like that back then? The studio would not have recorded it because they were sending out the news and it didn't have the bootleg coming into their system. Whether or not the YouTube video is the real deal or not, it doesn't have the words of Vrillon for you to hear. The anchorman on the TV was unaware of the signal being hijacked. He continued with his report. As his image played on the screens of TVs all across southern England, the voice of the alien voice was over his. Vrillon continued passing on a message aimed at the world's leaders, saying they must destroy the weapons of evil and learn to live together in peace, because our time here on Earth was short. Any kind of advanced technology, like hacking into a news broadcast, would appear almost like magic. People didn't do things like this. The folks at home listening to the voice of Vrillon were convinced they were actually hearing a space alien talking to them. The people at the news station had no idea anything was going on. At their end of the system, the news anchor was talking about the normal things going on in a day-to-day life. It wasn't until people began calling in asking what was going on that the guys in charge found out there was someone, or something, using their signal to broadcast an alternate message. The interruption of the signal was soon traced to the Hannington transmitter in Hannington, Hampshire. TV signals could only travel so far due to the curvature of the planet. In a straight line, they could go on forever, but to get the signal to curve, the technicians had to install signal-boosting stations in various locations. This was long before satellite transmissions. In the fall of 1945, an RAF electronics officer and a member of the British Interplanetary Society, Arthur C. Clarke, who you know him better for the guy that wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, wrote a short article in Wireless World that described the use of manned satellites, 24-hour orbits high above the world, to distribute television programs. Telstar 1 was a collaboration between NASA and American Telephone and Telegraph, better known as AT&T, which launched July 10, 1962. For the first time ever, it provided audio communications and simultaneous video between the US, Europe, and Japan, becoming the first active communications satellite capable of transmitting a signal. This was way too expensive for local news stations to get in on. 1972, Telesat Canada launched the first domestic communications satellite, Anik, to serve the vast Canadian continental area. RCA promptly leased circuits on the Canadian satellite until they could launch their own. In 1976, AT&T and Comsat launched the first of the Comstar series. These satellites were used for voice and data, but very quickly television became a major user. By the end of 1976, there were 120 transponders available over the U.S., each capable of providing 1,500 telephone channels or just one TV channel. During the hijack, the Hannington transmitter was receiving its feed from another transmitter through ultra-high frequencies, or UHF. Since the Hannington was receiving the broadcast through the air by way of normal radio and TV transmission. This was an outdated form of broadcast because landline feeds, like telephone wires, were far more secure. The over-the-air transmission was vulnerable to hijackers, and so it was. This might explain why the voice of Vrillon was patched into this broadcast signal. The repeater antennas are bouncing signals off of each other, which made it possible for the alien message to be heard throughout the far wider area. There may have been as many as hundreds of thousands of viewers who were the recipients of this message from somewhere in outer space, or maybe some mothership orbiting the moon or one of our neighbor planets. The United Kingdom's Independent Broadcast Authority, the IBA, scrambled to put together some kind of a response for the panicking audience. The station's telephone lines were overflowing as people called in wanting to know if this message was real or not. Soon after the broadcast, the IBA came out trying to explain what had happened. They said a hoaxer jammed our transmitter in the wilds of North Hampshire by taking over another transmitter which was closer to it. The hijacking of the television station feed had been successfully done. So, the question was, by who? In 1969, in response to the Condon Report, as well as the declining numbers of UFO sightings, a Project Blue Book was officially brought to an end. Among its conclusions were that the sightings categorized as unidentified were no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that they were the result of technology beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge, or that they were extraterrestrial vehicles. They claimed that 3% of the sightings could not be explained, whereas in reality it was 30%. But Condon was well known for not wanting to believe in UFOs. He'd made up his mind long before the committee had even gotten started. Using advice from the Robertson panel, the government in the United States had gone into full cover-up mode. Anyone seeing a UFO was either crazy, drunk, or lying. The United Kingdom followed in the steps of the U.S. It didn't matter how many people were seeing UFOs. What mattered was to steer attention away from these reports using any means available. Lie to the public if need be. Destroy people if you had to. But make the whole UFO problem go away. Well, at least for the public. While heaping derision on UFO witnesses and UFO groups, the governments were still trying to figure out what was actually going on. There are several questions and rumors about this story. Was this really a message from an extraterrestrial being? Why would they only broadcast to a small repeater out in the middle of nowhere when the world is full of bustling cities and thriving cultures? One rumor is that this message is not extraterrestrial in origin, but rather very terrestrial and very deceiving. The voice that was transmitted through the Hannington repeater identified itself as Vrillon. Vrillon is the most repeated name that exists in several broadcast transcripts floating around on the internet. The other names are Ashtaron and Gylon. One rumor got started saying the hijackers were actually a group of UFO enthusiasts that had been around since 1974. They say that the transmitter was hijacked by this famous cult. The young but already infamous UFO cult started by Claude Vrillon. Mr. Vrillon had founded the Vrillon Church, a UFO religion, back in 1973. Claude Vrillon was a young French street musician, a race car driver, and an automotive journalist. In 1973, he was hiking around the crater of an extinct volcano in France when he spotted a flying saucer. It came over the edge of the crater and landed nearby. As Claude stood there watching, a small alien came from the craft. The creature looked to be short, maybe 4.5 feet tall, male, and it looked as if it was from Japan. The alien did speak fluent French, so Claude was able to communicate. The alien told Claude his name was Yahweh, and French was the universal language. Some of y'all will recognize the name Yahweh as being the Hebrew name of God used in the Bible. The name of God was considered so sacred it was never spoken or written. Yahweh is an anglicized pronunciation of the vowels used to represent God's name in Hebrew. You'll find God's name in the Bible, but not in the Torah or other Hebrew writings. The alien also said he was a representative of a race called Elohim. Once again, the name Elohim is a substitute name for God used frequently in the Hebrew Bible. At that, I am going to take a very brief pause and play my usual commercials, give my voice a chance to relax and recover. Don't go away, we'll be right back. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Makeup isn't something you want to just smear on and hope for the best. You might come out looking like Lon Chaney. Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and get a free makeover to see how makeup should be done. 956-723-3019. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs. coffee, nectar of the gods. And at the Organic Man Coffee Trike, you'll find coffee made the right way, one delicious cup at a time. Stop on by 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. If you need to squint and hold things out at arm's length to see them, maybe you should get your eyes checked. Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, is right across from the Embassy Suites. Stop squinting and start seeing. This is Arkanasa Radio you've been listening to. And welcome back to the show. Well, for the next 6 days, Cloud would meet up with Yahweh for about an hour or two. The alien told him all about the bad things going on in our world and how to fix them. Over the course of 6 days, Yahweh explained all the events of the Old Testament as being actual events, with purely natural explanations, usually assisted by the Elohim. Adam and Eve were a literal man and woman who came from DNA, a custom designed by the Elohim. Humanity is literally the implanted descendants of space aliens. Like the Christian second coming of Jesus, Yahweh promised Vrillon that the Elohim would return to Earth when enough of its people have learned the true history of the race and have become peaceful as well as prosperous. For this purpose, Vrillon was instructed to build an embassy at which the Elohim can be received when they eventually show up. The Cloud adopted the name Rael. He then set about building a religion or a cult, depending on how you look at it. A cult is a small religious group which is not part of a larger or more accepted religion, with socially deviant, different, or new beliefs and practices. A newly established religion may also be called by the name cult. No one can say how big a cult has to be before it is considered to be a religion. Rael founded Medech, or the Movement to Welcome the Creators of Humanity. 2 years later, Yahweh returned to visit Rael. This time, Rael was allowed on board the spaceship, and he was taken for a ride. Taken for a ride has an idiomatic connotation. Taken for a ride means someone has fooled you or cheated you, perhaps taken money from you in the process. Well, Rael was taken off the Earth and flown around the solar system. Their first stop was an orbiting spa, an outer space spa. Just like here on Earth, they gave him a massage. There was aromatherapy. I imagine there was some light music playing in the background. I'm not saying this didn't happen. It's just so different from all the other accounts of alien interactions over the years. The next stop was the Elohim Homeworld. This was a warm jungle planet called the Planet of Eternals. Rael was introduced to Jesus, Buddha, Mohammed, and Moses. Rael was shown their facilities for creating immortal biological robots. They created one of his mother, and then a whole group of attractive young females. The report says they all went to Rael's apartment and they had a party. This does sound weird. There he is having a party surrounded by gorgeous robot women and his mother. The next morning, Rael was taken to another facility where they used a helmet machine in order to maximize his facilities, making him as intelligent as possible. Yahweh explained the importance of this procedure. It was to best prepare Rael for geniocracy, a form of government where the intelligence determines who should lead. Yahweh later flew Rael back to Earth. The total time between Rael's first encounter and his return from his trip in space was 666 days. While all this was going on, there were a few hundred members of the Raelian movement. Over the years, this number has grown to somewhere in the tens of thousands. Japan and Korea in particular have taken quite kindly to the Raelian movement. You'll find some of their largest chapters there. Raelians embrace technological advances to improve the human condition. They support genetically modified crops to best feed the growing population. They must not realize that GMOs have far less nutritional value than unmodified crops. The Raelians love advanced materials, science, and nanotechnology. They support nuclear power and fusion research for cheap, clean energy. They support genetic research and manipulation to produce people who are as healthy and long-lived as genetically possible. They support terraforming of other planets as the technology becomes available. And they're into cloning. Not cloning the mammoth like Josh Gates on TV. They want to clone humans, which is supposed to be illegal in every part of the planet. You know there are labs here and there around the world trying to clone people. Anytime there's a ton of money and some out-of-work scientists, there will be illegal labs being put together. The Raelians say they have successfully cloned several people. One, a female clone, is named Eve and is supposed to be in Israel, hiding out in one of the cult's compounds. There might be others in different locations. These clones are supposed to be the new bodies to be used by older members of the cult so they can be regenerated. Philosophically, Raelians oppose war and violence in all of its forms. They just love to show up at anti-war rallies dressed as aliens. Raelians also embrace free love and nudity, especially in public. They consider love to be the answer to virtually all of the world's problems. It's been reported that at some Raelian conferences, attendees wear colored wristbands indicating what their tastes in companions might be. Nudity is common at these get-togethers. This overabundance of skin has led to some visitors deciding to become members. Raelian philosophy attracts many atheists and skeptics who find a lot that they can get on board with. As science as the solution to all the problems of the world is one of their strategies. Advanced technology to improve health and longevity is another. Make love, not war, was the common war cry of the hippies back when I was still in school. I know this is a misnomer, a war cry of a peace movement. We used to call their get-togethers peace riots. The hippies would get together and begin destroying everything around town to show how peaceful they could be. I loved the smell of tear gas in the morning. It reminds me of having my sinus cavities cleaned out with a wire brush. And now it's time for a story. I went through tank crew training at Fort Knox. One of the things we had to do was visit the gas chamber. We all lined up in our platoons and waited to get educated. The senior drill told us to break ranks and get in line. We didn't have to be in any kind of order, just get in the line. I ran to the front. I was going to be the first, if not one of the first folks, to taste the wrath of a chemical bath. No, I'm not a masochist. I don't like pain or suffering. I also didn't want to stand there waiting and wondering how bad it was going to be. We donned our protective masks and walked into the building. It looked as if there wasn't anything in the room. We jumped up and down a bit, did some jumping jacks, maybe some push-ups. I thought, well, this isn't so bad. And then Sergeant Cobb told us to remove our masks. It didn't just hurt. It was like acid going into my lungs. We had to do more jumping jacks before we could exit. Get those juices flowing. Lung juices. Once we were all appropriately tortured, we were sent out the room. Someone had a sense of humor. There was a hallway leading to the back door. It was a T intersection. I turned the corner and ran into a dead end. Oh yes, and there were no lights, so it was very dark in that hallway. The door was in the opposite direction. Well, I managed to stumble out the door and right into a tree. There was a huge oak right in front of the back door. Now this tree was old enough that the building was put up after the tree was there. So you know that whoever designed the building intentionally had the exit facing that tree. Just about everybody that ran out the door managed to hit it. To get the gas out of our clothes, we were told to flap our arms. Then one of the drill sergeants told us, "Yell, I'm a bird, I can fly." We looked like a bunch of sick seagulls running around the building, flapping our arms, yelling, "I'm a bird, I can fly." Well, there was about 20 of us in the group, I think. Once I had cleared the gas from my lungs, with the front of my uniform covered in nasty goo, I now got to stand back and watch all of the guys who came along behind me walking into the gas chamber and coming back out about 15 minutes later. One guy came stumbling along yelling, "I'm a bird, I can't fly." He looked about as miserable as a guy could get. Ah, fun times. Every year after this, we had to go back and get gassed again. I'll take tear gas any day over pepper spray, but, well, that's another story. The Vrillon movement is probably far less harmful than in many of the other cults out there, since they don't teach you that you can be cured of cancer by telepathy or appealing to some paranormal super being. In fact, if you're sick, they'll send you to the hospital, get you cured by a doctor, and then welcome you back. They don't require that you give them all your life savings so you can be saved. So far, nobody's ever fought a war or perpetrated a terrorist attack over Vrillon religious differences. I can't find any instances of people trying to leave the group only to be force-fed more of their ideas. If you join the group and then decide you've had enough, you just say goodbye and leave, and they all smile and wave as you walk out the door. Vrillon and Vrillon. The two do sound a lot alike. It wasn't a stretch of imagination before people were saying it was the Vrillons who had done the deed. They were well known as being UFO enthusiasts, if not downright fanatics. In 1976, in response to international power struggles, Vrillon dissolved the Matic and founded the Vrillon movement. The Vrillon movement has been involved in a series of controversies throughout the history. The symbol of the Vrillon movement which Rael reports he first observed on the hull of the Elohim spaceship, is a swastika inside the Star of David. The swastika is a geometrical figure of an ancient religious icon in the cultures of Eurasia. It is used as a symbol of divinity and spirituality in the Indian religion. Dot, not feather. Which includes Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. The Mississippian culture of the mound builders of North America had a symbol that looked exactly like the swastika. Some of the Indian tribes, that's feather not dot, still retain some elements of the Mississippi culture and the symbols of the broken cross symbol. The ancient swastika was shown with the central cross upright. When Hitler appropriated the swastika, he had it rotated so the central cross now became an X. The Raelian symbol was representing the unity of infinity and eternal, and was worn on a medallion by the members, but it caused opposition due to the presence of the swastika. In 1992, Rael announced that, out of respect for the victims of the Nazi Holocaust, the symbol of the Raelian movement was replaced by a daisy-shaped swirling galaxy symbol, representing the cycle of infinity in time. The Raelians have never come out and said they made the 1977 hijacking. If you search around enough, you might find someone claiming some little-known member of the group came out and said he was involved in this feat. This statement has no proof. Someone simply typed out the story to put smoke on the actual story. There are people saying that George Van Tassel was contacted by the Ashtar Command. I did a show just a few weeks back about Van Tassel. I never found any reference to his meeting with either Vrillon or the Ashtar Command. Reverend Robert Short used to channel space aliens. Some say he was channeling Vrillon. However, Short said he was contacting some being named Corton. For over half a century, Reverend Short and his wife Shirley operated the Blue Rose Ministry out of their home in Cornville, Arizona. They also published the Solar Space Newsletter. He did appear on the Cosmic Eye Ashtar Command Radio Worldwide with Commander Elion on Sunday, June 28, 2009. However, I couldn't find any time that he actually said he had been contacted by Ashtar Command. One website says Ashtar Command was first heard from in 1952. The same website then says Ashtar was first heard during the 1977 broadcast hijacking. Folks, if you're going through all the bother of building a website, try to keep your facts straight. There could be a connection between the alien who contacted both George Van Tassel and Robert Short, as well as the Ashtar Command. Until some alien comes down and tells us, we won't know for sure. It's getting a bit confusing while trying to do research when some folks say one thing and others say another. Some have tried to link the message from Vrillon to doomsday cults. They say anyone who listens to things like this are probably wearing tinfoil hats and watching the sky for alien invasion. A tinfoil hats is a common movie and TV prop when dealing with aliens. The hat was meant to protect the person from alien waves entering their brain or to keep Big Brother out of your thoughts. A study done in 2005 by MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to see if encasing your noggin in food wrap was worth the effort. As a matter of fact, aluminum helmets actually amplify radio waves in the frequency range currently used by the government, the cell phone companies, and satellites. It almost sounds as if the government was spreading the idea of tinfoil as an effective defense, so people would be more susceptible to radio waves instead of less. The idea of wrapping your head in foil came about following the use of Faraday cages as a means of protecting electronic devices from electromagnetic pulses. In order to protect a person's brain from outside waves, the entire head would need to be covered by foil, making life somewhat difficult. Your eyes, nose, mouth, and ears would all need to be covered, not just the top of your skull. So, if you ever find yourself in need of protection from alien waves, you'll need to come up with a tinfoil suit, kind of like a knight would have worn back in the Dark Ages. You'll look like a breakfast burrito. As for doomsday, there is very little in Vrillon's message about the end of the world. He did say we needed to change our ways, but doomsday cults believe the end of the world is coming and it's time to go. Folks like Heaven's Gate cult. Well, the world did end for them. Ashtar Command has a few of their own websites, like ashtar.galactic.to. Their opening statement says, "The Ashtar Command is the airborne division of the Great Brother Sisterhood of Light. Under the administrative direction of Commander Ashtar and the spiritual guidance of Lord Sananda, our Commander-in-Chief, known to Earth as Jesus Christ. Composed of millions of starships and personnel from many civilizations, we are here to assist Earth and humanity through the current cycle of planetary cleansing and polar realignment." If y'all listened to the pole shift stories a couple of weeks ago, maybe you'll recognize some of that. "We serve like midwives in the birthing of humanity from dense physical to physical etheric bodies of light, capable of ascending into the fifth dimension along with the Earth." Then there's the Ashtar Galactic Commanders.ning.com. NING is an online platform for people and organizations to create custom social networks. Ashtar Galactic Command's opening statements say, "Uniting our star family's ground crew on spiritual mission to Earth. A community of light workers co-creating heaven on Earth. Welcome home. Greetings, new Ashtar members." The United States site, which was started in late 2008, is here for those of the Lightworker Ashtar world community to interact, share your cosmic oneness with each other, and have a place where all can provide information on the cosmic spiritual light with our members. You can check them out if you want. You can see what they believe. None of these websites lay claim to the 1977 news broadcast hijacking. To date, no one has ever come out and said they were behind the 1977 telecast. No one has found any evidence of who did it either. There are lots of folks who claim they know who did it. They will say things like they know a guy who told them they know a guy who was there when the hijacking was perpetrated. There are those who will say they don't actually know who did it, but they know for a fact the person saying they were Vrillon was faking it. They can prove it, but they know. The government says it was just kids messing around with some old surplus electronics that hacked into the news feed. Once more, they don't know who it was, but not to worry, space aliens are not talking to us. In 1967, the United Nations created the Treaty on Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and Use of the Outer Space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies. That's quite a mouthful, so they often refer to this as the Outer Space Treaty. It was initially signed by Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, but has now been signed by 125 countries. Article 5 of the Outer Space Treaty says, states parties to the treaty shall immediately inform the other states parties to the treaty or the Secretary General of the United Nations of any phenomena they discover in outer space which could constitute a danger to life or health of astronauts. That would naturally include the discovery of extraterrestrials. We all know governments never break treaties, right? Germany signed a treaty saying they would not invade Russia, and then they invaded Russia. The United States signed all kinds of treaties with the Indians just before breaking each and every one of them. Treaties are not worth the paper they're written on, yet folks will sit back and relax knowing there's a treaty with some other countries saying they won't swoop in and try to kill us. The Outer Space Treaty also says, with the observation of liquid water on the surface of Mars, the probability of life being present there has increased. The Outer Space Treaty forbids possible contamination of alien life by humans and human technology. Anywhere with liquid water is considered a special region with special rules for exploring that area. Other special regions include places with volcanic activity and caves. NASA's rover haven't gone into any of these areas to take pictures of the liquid water that they say is on Mars, despite the excitement its existence has caused. The rovers don't meet sterilization standards to be considered safe to send on a data-gathering mission to areas where there could conceivably be life forms. Does anyone really think NASA has skipped out on exploring these locations? There are probably several other robotic exploration vehicles scurrying about the red planet, looking into caves and under rocks. We will more than likely never know what they have found because knowledge is power and power is controlled by the elites. In recent years, others have come out with recordings of alien broadcasts. Some sound an awful lot like the 1977 recording. Others sound as if someone needs acting lessons. The problem with advances in technology is it gets easier to fake things. If the CIA had modern computers back in 1963, there would have been a video of Lee Harvey Oswald shooting Kennedy instead of just some badly doctored photos of him holding that rifle. As for aliens coming to Earth to save us, I think there just might be a few races out there interested in our well-being. However, I don't trust anyone or anything that says it's for our own good. This statement is usually followed by something really bad and really painful. If you'd like to hear more on the subject of aliens and UFOs, set your sights on August. The Edinburgh UFO Conference and Festival is scheduled for August 13th to the 15th. The 3-day event will take place at the historic Edinburgh Municipal Auditorium, the City Hall Courtyard, and the Edinburgh Conference Centre at Renaissance. UFO enthusiasts will gather once again for a 3-day event that will kick off on Thursday, August 13th, with an open mic event at the historic Edinburgh Municipal Auditorium. It is very historic. This building is over 100 years old. You got to see it to believe it, and it's a really cool place. I like going there. The free festival on August 14th will feature UFO merchandise, live entertainment, a costume contest, a laser light show, not Pink Floyd though, food and family-friendly activities from 6 p.m. until 10. The festival is free and open to the public. I wonder if the aliens will show up. I wouldn't recognize them if they did unless they're doing that public nudity thing, in which case they'd probably get hauled away. The conference on August 15th will take place at the Edinburgh Conference Centre at Renaissance from 9 in the morning until 5 in the evening. Attendees will hear from some of the most renowned UFO researchers. Now, I have looked at the list of the hopeful presenters that will be at the conference, but I'm not going to go down the list at this time. It is a bit of a time between now and then, and I'm afraid that one or two of the folks listed might decide they can't make it, might not be able to make it for whatever reason. However, it looks like it's going to be an interesting time. The Edinburgh Municipal Auditorium and City Hall Courtyard are located at 415 West University Drive, and the Edinburgh Conference Centre at Renaissance is located at 118 Paseo del Prado. For more information, you can contact the Events Center, and you can ask for ticket information by going to edinburgharts.com. That's edinburgharts.com, or you can call 956 383 6246. You can find more details on Facebook by going to the Edinburgh Out of This World UFO Conference. I hope to see you there. I'll have a table set up selling some of my books. Stop by and say hi, or maybe you want to buy a book or three. They make good presents for both birthdays and Christmas. Just ask my nieces and nephews. That's all they ever get are books. Not necessarily my books, but somebody's books, because I like books. Until next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?